All right, guys, this is going to be a fun one. This is going to be a fun one. We are talking about optimizing training today. Now, we're talking about optimizing training today. So, before we get into the show, just want to give you guys a quick reminder. The goal of this podcast, as always, is to help athletes build their dream careers in sport. So make sure you share it around, whether that is with a young athlete you know that is up and coming and trying to build their career, whether that's with a coach who deals with a lot of young athletes, whether that's with a teammate, if you are a young athlete yourself and you are, other teammates that are trying to reach new levels in your sport. Anyone and everyone can benefit. Today, we're talking about optimizing training. So let's go. Let's get into the show right away. No point in waiting. So let's get into it. 3, 2, 1. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Elite Development Podcast, the number one show for athletes looking to gain an edge on their opponents and build their dream careers in sport. I am your host, Kenny Dusseault. And today, guys, we are talking about optimizing training. Now, when I say optimizing training, what do I mean? Now, let's start with the goal of training. And this is something I see a lot of athletes misinterpret, or a lot of athletes that, are a little bit misguided when they think about the goal of training. Guys, the goal of training, plain and simple, I've said it before on this show, so hopefully if you've been a part of the journey, all of that, you've heard me say it, the goal of training is to succeed in the sport, period. The goal of training is to succeed in the sport. If you are training for a sport, you are doing so to be successful in the sport. That's it. And if you're training for any other reason while telling yourself that you're trying to become an athlete, then you're kidding yourself. The goal of training is to succeed in the sport, plain and simple. And so when I talk about optimizing training, what I need you guys to do and what I need you guys to reframe in your minds is what you're doing in your training and why. As an example, if you need to dig a hole, if you're outside in your backyard, you need to dig a hole. I'm not going to question for what. But if you need to dig a hole and you have two options, use a shovel or use a spoon, you're going to use a shovel because you're going to get the hole dug faster. It doesn't mean that digging the hole is not going to be difficult, but it's going to be a hell of a lot fucking easier using a shovel than it will be using a spoon. If you are trying to get to the top of a large hill and you have the option of driving in a car or walking, and the only goal is to get to the top of the hill, you're going to pick the car because you're going to get there faster. It's going to be easier. It's going to take a lot less out of you. You're going to pick the car. Unless you're a little bit crazy, then maybe you're going to take the walking route, but you're not trying to get in shape by walking up the hill. Literally, the only goal is to get up the hill. You're going to pick the easier way to do it. Now, that being said, for some reason, athletes forget this when it comes to training. Athletes often take this mentality that the only way to succeed is to make training as hard as possible. And guys, it's just not true. Now, disclaimer, when I say that, I am not saying that you should not make training difficult. I am not saying that you shouldn't push yourself. I am not saying that hard work is bad. Mind-blowing to me that I actually have to put that out as a disclaimer, but the amount of fucking morons on the internet that hear me say hard work is not the only piece of the puzzle when it comes to training and come on and say dumb shit like, no, are you telling us not to work hard? No, I'm not telling you not to work hard. I'm not telling you not to push yourself. I'm not saying hard work is bad. I'm not saying the training shouldn't be hard. Just wanted to throw that out there. But guys, training harder is not the goal. Succeeding on the night of competition is the goal. And that's the reframe that I need you guys to make in your mind. The goal is to find the easiest possible way to get the best possible result to see success in the sport. Does this mean it's going to be easy? No. You are still going to have to push yourself hard. But if you can avoid extra hard work that is not giving you results that are going to help you achieve the goal that you are trying to achieve, wouldn't you want to do that? And I hear a lot of people say, it's like, oh, but the hard work, builds the mental resiliency and all that. Sure. But now we've got to think, if the goal of training is to succeed in the sport, what do you need to succeed in the sport? You need a good skill set. You need a good gas tank. You need good power, good speed, good explosiveness, good head on your shoulders. You need the mental side in check too. And you need to be able to push the pace for the duration of competition. If you are a pro MMA fighter fighting in a non-title fight, the chances are your competition is 3 5-minute rounds with 1 minute in between each round. That is what you need to prepare for. That's it. You don't need to prepare for 18 5-minute rounds. You don't need to prepare for a fucking marathon. You need to prepare for 3 5-minute rounds with 1 minute in between each round. Now, the goal is not to do the bare minimum, but what the goal is to have the healthiest, strongest, most explosive, best conditioned version of you in that cage on that night. So if you're taking the training approach of just trying to make it as hard as possible all the time, what starts to happen is, yeah, you're grinding your ass off. You feel good. You feel strong. You feel tough, all of that great shit. But your body starts to break down. If you're overtraining, your body starts to break down. You start to develop these little injuries. Now, all of a sudden, your shoulder doesn't quite feel right. Your knee doesn't quite feel right. And the quality of your training starts to diminish. Because, plain and simple, remember, the goal of training is not to make it the hardest. The goal of training is to succeed on the night of competition. So you continue to train through it. You continue to push harder. You continue to do more because in your mind, the harder I push, the more prepared I'm going to be. But in truth, what you're doing to yourself is you're breaking your body down by overdoing it. And then on the night of competition, when you're a shell of who you were 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, because you kept training through all these injuries, you're demanding your body to go into the cage and fight. And that is a recipe for disaster. Because again, instead of focusing on strongest, healthiest, best conditioned, most powerful, fastest version of me in the cage on the night of the fight, what you were concentrating on is how many rounds of sparring can I do before I puke? How many hours of cardio can I do before I die? How much cardio can I fit in before my 12 rounds of sparring so I can show how fucking tough I am? And that's all well and good if that's what you choose to do. But if it leads to you not being in shape and ready to go on the night of the fight, you're fucking up. Plain and simple. You're fucking up. Now, how do you reframe this? And how do you rebuild this? Because I know a lot of people are going to be listening to this and immediately go on the fucking judgment call again of, he's telling us not to work hard. Guys, no, not fucking telling you not to work hard. Like, stop being stupid. But how you reframe this in your mind is, again, think about the end goal. Have the end goal top of mind at all times. I have a lot of athletes that'll tell me, yeah, I go and I hit the bag every night for an hour after I finish training. Why? Well, I want to put more work in. And I'm like, well, how concentrated is that work? Like how, fast and explosive and sharp are you feeling when you're hitting the bag for an hour after doing 2 to 3 hours of training when you haven't eaten in 6 hours? It's like, how good is that training? Well, yeah, I guess it's not that good. It's like, then that's something that you should cut. That's something that you should cut. Because if you're training, if you are sacrificing the quality of your training just to say that you trained for longer, that's not going to benefit you coming into the sport. What's going to benefit you more? That extra hour of half-assed work every day, or getting home, getting a good meal into your body and getting a good night's sleep so you can recover for the training that you have to do the next day? I'm going to tell you right away, it's going to be the meal, the sleep, and the recovery so that you can train harder the next day. But if you do that extra hour of half-assed work every time and you're taking away from your recovery, taking away from your nutrition, taking away from your sleep, what starts to happen is you have a less and less and lessened version of yourself every day in training. And if you have a lessened version of yourself every day in training, then you're not getting as much out of every training session you do. So you're checking the box. You're saying, yeah, I showed up to the gym today. I trained for 3 hours today. I did my extra hour of bag work today. Check, check, check. But you're not improving at the rate you need to be at your best when you actually step into the fight, when it actually matters. So in the end, who's winning? The person who just put in the most hours or the person who considered the end goal of training? So the big reframe I want to give you guys, the big thing I need you thinking about as we wrap this one up, it's a pretty short episode today, but as we wrap this one up, the big thing I need you guys thinking about is, are you focused on burning yourself out all the time, or are you focused on actually making continuous progress? Because if you are taking the approach right now of, I always have to throw in that extra hour of bag work, or I always have to, as soon as I finish my 3-hour night of training, I hit the trail and I go for an hour-long run, you've got to ask yourself, is that work for the sake of work, or is that work that is actually going to build a stronger, faster, more injury resilient, better conditioned, more powerful version of you on the night of the fight? Because the other thing on that you've got to remember, because I know a lot of people are going to hear that one and they're going to say, well, more conditioning is going to help you be more conditioned, right? If you're going for these hour-long runs, remember 1 hour or 90 minutes or whatever you're doing at that one steady pace that you're going for those runs at is not going to match the energy requirements of a 5-minute explosive, fast, repeatable round that you're going to actually need to hit while you're fighting. So guys, think about how what you're doing is actually translating to the sport. Think about how much of it you need to actually translate into the sport, and think about how you can get the fastest possible result that's going to translate properly to the sport. And again, I'm going to say it one more time, because I know there's still going to be that one idiot listening to this thinking that this is me telling you that you don't have to work hard to get ready for a fight. That is not what I'm saying. I'm not saying you don't have to work hard. I'm saying there is a certain amount of hard work that is required, and then there is a certain amount of hard work that is overkill that's actually taking away from your performance instead of adding to it. So next time you think about that extra hour-long run in the middle of the night just to show how fucking tough you are because you train while your opponent sleeps, ask yourself, what's going to benefit me more? Being awake at 2 o'clock in the morning, going for runs just so I can tell everyone that I train while my opponent sleeps, or recovering so that I'm actually present, recharged, and aware when I go to training tomorrow? I'm going to say it's probably recovering, being aware, and getting more out of your session tomorrow. So keep that end goal top of mind. Remember, the end goal is not to just be the hardest worker. The end goal is not to just do the most hours. The end goal is not to stroke your ego and show everyone how many hours you train and how hard you work and all this shit you do. The end goal is to win. And if you're feeling burnt out, beat up, sore, injured, tired, whatever it is, you might be better off recovering for a day and then coming back to training tomorrow, instead of just grinding through that and beating your body down for another 3-4 weeks. And then when your body's at its worst, demand that it go perform at its best. So yes, hard work is important. Yes, pushing yourself is important. Yes, the grind is important. But guys, remember the end goal. Remember what you are actually here to do. You are actually here to succeed in your sport. You are actually putting all this work in to be successful on the night of competition. And if the training you're doing isn't reflective of succeeding on the night of competition, I don't care how many hours you're putting in, you're not doing it right. So learn to optimize your training, learn to make those tough calls, learn to put the ego aside and actually do what's right for you, instead of checking the box to show everyone how fucking tough you are. Because guess what? If you are a combat sports athlete listening to this, you are tough. We know it. If you weren't, you wouldn't be stepping into a cage or a ring to fight someone. That's not something that people that aren't tough do, plain and simple. So you're tough already. You don't need to prove it. Learn to optimize your training instead of just trying to be the guy or the girl in the room that does the most. So I appreciate you tuning in. Thanks for taking the time. Now, my one big ask of you guys always is to share who's going to benefit from hearing this message. So I appreciate you all for tuning in. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll catch you on the next episode.